One paradox of being a designer is needing a portfolio of work to get a job, but needing a job to fill your portfolio. There are many reasons your portfolio might be lacking. You may have just started your career, you may have taken time off, and your old work no longer represents your skill set. In my case, my professional work for the last few years is under a non-disclosure agreement, waiting to be released to the world by my old employer. Whatever the reason, you are left with the problem of not having work for your portfolio, but needing that portfolio to get work. So what do? The conventional wisdom is to take as many projects as you can to fill out that portfolio, be they professional projects you can somehow land without a portfolio, or dummy projects you make up yourself. The issue with this is that it's time intensive, and not much help if you're looking for work now. My solution comes from a term I wish I discovered much sooner: minimum viable product. This concept has you concentrate your time and resources on only the minimum necessary requirements to create a functional product. This is the benefit of getting your product, in this case you as a designer, to market as fast as possible. It mitigates the risk of spending too much time and resources on something that might not work in the long run. So I asked myself, what is the minimum viable product for a portfolio? The answer for me was a website that showcased my level of competency with my professional skills. I don't need mountains of previous work, I just need to prove I can do what I say I can do. The more I thought about it, the more I realised I could accomplish this with just one project, the portfolio itself. My key goal is to prove I'm a multidisciplinary designer with a variety of creative skills. Communicating that message has become the brief for a single project. My answer to that brief was the concept of me being a designer who wore a lot of hats. Each hat would be a visual representation of a core skill, and you can navigate each skill by selecting the hats. It was one simple concept, only one project, and the result would be a quick portfolio without needing to rely on existing work. It would be quick to create, light on resources, and just as importantly, light on budget. Speaking of budget, I started by showcasing how a touch of creative thinking can overcome budgetary restraints. The project relied on a visual representation of me wearing different hats, therefore I needed a good image of myself as a base to work from. I don't have the budget for a studio and professional lighting, but I do have a camera, a tripod, and a desk lamp. It's not much, but with patience, a lot of trial and error, and the ability to withstand the derisive looks of your judgmental dog who thinks you're going crazy, it was enough to create a usable photo of myself with some directional lighting to create some interesting shadows and highlights. The results might not stand up to the standards of professional portrait photographer with thousands of pounds of equipment, but it's good enough to use as a base that, with a touch of creativity, will be more than suitable for my purposes. To save timing editing these photos, I've simplified my editing process to be as efficient as possible. I bring them all into Lightroom and quickly judge each photo one by one. I'm not editing anything, just analysing its potential. If it's in focus, has a composition I can work with, feels like it's fit for purpose with no glaring issues, I press number 1 to give it 1 star, then move on. Once I've gone through them all, I filter the photos for those with 1 star, usually leaving me with at most 10% of the photos I started with. A quick base edit on the first 1-star photo gets copied to the rest, and I'll repeat the selection process. This time I'm awarding a 2nd star to the photos that are clearly superior to the others. It's not long before I work my selection down to just a couple of photos, meaning I've skipped the need to edit the majority. In this case, I was left with the photos that best met the brief. With only 2 photos left, I can take the time to edit these properly, then take them into Photoshop to cut out the background and perform some quick manipulation tests to finally arrive at the winner, this picture. If you're following a similar process for your own creative project and don't get a result that is this devilishly handsome, don't worry too much about it. There are some gifts from nature that even Photoshop can't reproduce. The more important thing is that you have a picture of yourself that you don't hate so much you want to claw your eyes out every time you see it. With the base done, I can start my portfolio with an introductory page. I want something that's in contrast to the rest of the site, but still showcases what I can do as a designer. The rest of the site will be colourful, with many visually striking elements collected in each page and depicting me wearing a hat. Therefore, a good contrast is something with a muted colour scheme, in this case black and white, a minimal design and no hats. Honestly, I'm not overly thrilled with how the title turned out here. However, as the saying goes, perfection is the enemy of good, and I think that's valid for this project. I may think I can improve on the end result, but this is more than good enough for its purpose. The benefit of the minimum viable product methodology is that I won't waste time trying to make this element perfect when it's already good enough for my needs. Instead, I'll move on with the rest of the project. I can always come back after the project is complete if I decide it still isn't working, then I'll have the luxury of time to fix it without worrying about delaying the deadline. The first hat I want to showcase is graphic design. I start by researching graphic design as a concept. The intention is not to copy anything, but to spark ideas of what people expect to see when they think of graphic design, even though in truth graphic design can be anything. I also research what a stereotypical designer might look like to get an idea of what kind of hat I need. After my research, I decided something like a fedora would be suitable. Rather than buy a hat and have to shoot another photo, I decided to create it in Blender. This was an opportunity to showcase my skills with 3D software, and it gave me an asset I could use at any angle and any lighting condition. Using my photo as a reference, I positioned the hat and the lighting to match, rendered it on a transparent background, and from there it was straightforward to Photoshop the hat into place. My research suggested using a half-tone pattern mixed with bright colours, as it was an effect used effectively in a lot of graphic art. For the title, what is more stereotypical in graphic design than lowercase Helvetica? After this, I decorated the image with a build-up of bold shapes and patterns to create what felt like a traditional graphic art style. I finished everything off by creating a pattern that blended into the white background so that if the image was seen on a large monitor, it wouldn't look like it was obviously floating block, but rather an image designed to work with the rest of the page. The second hat I would like to showcase is illustration. After some research, I settled on a comic book style for the layout system and also for a good way to decorate the picture of me without altering it so much it broke the flow of the website. With my hand in my pocket and the need for a hat, a superhero wasn't the right direction. However, a noir detective crime fighter was fit for purpose. Using the photo as a base for consistency, I sketched the image in Photoshop using my Huion graphics tablet. If you wanted to do something like this but don't have a graphics tablet, you could print the base image and trace over it. Scanning that image in for final edits will be a bit more work, but it will get the same result. To fill the comic panels, I picked a variety of sketches from my iPad that I completed over the last year or so, focusing on a variety of styles to show the breadth of my abilities. I didn't have enough work to fill the whole page, which is why we're working on this portfolio project in the first place, so I improvised on one of the panels by coming up with a concept that is in a different style to the rest of the illustrations. Again, I'm not looking for perfection, it's just something to finish off this page in a way I'm happy with. This illustration could definitely do with extra time, I didn't have to polish it up, but it didn't distract from the page as a whole. To finish it off, I needed a title that showcased a different style of typography than I've used so far, showcasing another skill in my arsenal. The third hat is photography, and I had to talk myself into including this one. I suffer from imposter syndrome over photography, a skill I have pursued more as a hobby than professionally. However, I can take attractive photos and have used that skill in a professional setting. I eventually came to a realisation that might help you if you feel the same way about showing off one of your professional skills not thinking you're good enough. I decided I wouldn't declare anything I wasn't capable of in my portfolio. I'm not claiming to be great at studio photography, I'm just showing the work that I've done in the past. So long as I'm honest up front about what I'm presenting to people, my discomfort at calling this professional setting goes away, as the decision of whether it is good enough lands in the eye of the beholder, and not with me. The hat for this page was something I imagine wildlife photographers wearing. However, now I think about it, the wildlife photographers I see when walking my dog don't wear hats like this, but something about that screams photographer to me. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if you can imagine a photographer wearing this. Finally, I just needed to create a title for this one, and this time I imagined the title as a logo project to showcase another aspect of graphic design that I'm comfortable with. The fourth hat was a stretch to portray visually. My skills as a web developer have little to do with the graphical representation of that skill. It's been a big part of my professional life for the last 15 years though, and it's a valuable skill to showcase, so I couldn't leave it out. I decided to create the image, but to let the website that houses the portfolio do the talking for my development skills, but more on that later. The concept was to create a version of myself made of code. The quickest way to achieve this was to create a rough 3D outline of myself in Blender and use code as a material. I could then blend a render of that with a base photo of myself using shadows and highlights mixed with the three-dimensional code shape to create the effect I was looking for. This time the hat was a simple red cap with the word nerd in a code style. In hindsight, this was not the most creative use of the hat and title for this page, but it worked for the minimum viable product, so I moved on for now. Imposter syndrome rears its ugly head again for Hat 5. I only started learning 3D modelling a year before making this portfolio and it felt wrong to include it as a skill. However, though by no means a 3D modelling expert, I know enough to make some great looking still images and basic animations. It's also something I've used professionally to great effect. So long as I was upfront about my limitations, I felt no need to worry about adding this as another hat to my portfolio. Rather than just create a hat this time, I escalated the concept further than I should have by creating a whole suit of futuristic armour and a sci-fi backdrop to showcase my creative abilities. Something simpler and quicker would have been much more fitting with the purpose of this project, but honestly, I had a lot of fun and didn't want to abandon working on it in favour of something less complex. I don't regret it, as creating something like this appeals to the fantasy sci-fi nerd of my personality. It's a good representation of who I am, and I think that's a good thing to show in your portfolio. Speaking of representing who you are, I also wanted to get some of my personality across in my last hat. I wanted to showcase a personal passion of mine, creative writing, and have a little fun at my own expense. This isn't technically a skill I suspect someone will hire me for, but it's another good way to help people get a better idea of who I am. With this page, I played on the concept of a shameless plug, as that is what I'm doing by plugging my books here. With the individual pages complete, as simple images, it's time to turn those images into a website. Designing that website starts in Adobe XD, where I lay out the pages as I think they will work on a desktop website. This goes against the commonly accepted mobile-first methodology of modern web design, but in this case I felt it was appropriate. I need my portfolio to stand proudly at a size that can showcase my work. I'd be happier popping up a message recommending people look at the site on a larger screen than compromise the concept for a mobile phone. I can always adapt to mobile phones later. To be clear, this is not how I approach most websites, but each website needs to be approached in the best way for it and its content. In this case, this felt right. Once I have a good idea of where the website is going in XD, I create a WordPress site on my local machine and start building the website. WordPress wasn't vital here, but it's a platform I'm comfortable developing for, so I'm not wasting time. It will also allow the site's growth to be more fluid in my next project, so it wasn't an issue to use immediately, even if I'm not taking advantage of all the benefits of WordPress yet. My idea for this website is to have slides as full-screen images, but rather than being separate pages, they are dynamically loaded through JavaScript when the right hat is clicked in the navigation. I wanted to create an experience different from using a standard website to help showcase my abilities as a developer. I felt this provided a creative way to do so, especially with the addition of an animation to make the transition smoother and more attention-grabbing. I created a spiral animation in After Effects and exported it as a PNG sequence, which I later stitched into a single image called an image sprite. I used JavaScript to create an animation from that sprite by showing different parts of the image at a specified frame rate. This technique creates reliable animations that are light on the computer's resources. My final steps were to ensure it worked responsibly so you could visit the site from any device and get a usable experience. Again, it won't be as polished as if custom designed for each device, but it will do for the minimum viable product. And here's the result, a single project that showcases my professional capabilities without having to do multiple projects to show them off. I don't need many previous examples of my work just yet, but I still have something I can use to find future work. More than this, I've created something that is a good representation of who I am as a person, showcasing more than just a standard portfolio. I'm sure you're fed up of hearing this by now, but this is a minimum viable product. It's not my intention to keep this portfolio in this state, but instead to get to a point I can work from as quickly as possible. I can use this website to start looking for work today, and later, when I have the luxury of extra time, I can update it further. Future jobs would be to create a more refined mobile experience, a contact form so people can get in touch, and then a About Me section with links to my resume. Once those are done, I can start adding in extra work as it becomes available, maybe building an extra portfolio section under each image. The point is that it's an interesting starting point for a portfolio that bypasses the paradox of needing examples of professional work in order to get professional work to create those examples in the first place. Hopefully that concept can help you in your own design journey. By constantly narrowing down the work you need to do to the bare minimum viable product and making up for that gap with creativity, you can drastically reduce the time and resources needed to get your career up and running. If you found value in this video, do me a favour and hit the like button and subscribe for more videos about the creative process. If you like the work showcased in this video and are interested in working with me, visit credesco.com to get in touch. That's a wrap on today's video. Good luck with your portfolio projects, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.